I want to talk to you today about trust, and in particular about how trust is essential for us to be able to distinguish fact from fiction, and about the fact that our modern web applications have somehow failed to incorporate a representation of trust in the way we interact with them. And if we don't fix that, we are going to be completely drowned in the deluge of misinformation that is headed our way thanks to the evolving AI platforms. So when I talk about misinformation, I'm talking about what we're all familiar with, the massive political misinformation around vaccines and around elections and around wars and around climate change, but also narrower targeted kinds of information, like when a group of people get together to spread false rumors about somebody in ways that completely upend their lives or get them shot. And even something that just popped out in the news yesterday, when a group of people will start posting false reviews of art or products in order to punish the purveyor of them. So a lot of people say that this is something that the platforms ought to fix. We hear lots of calls for this from government and NGOs. The problem is that they can't. The scale of misinformation is too large. There's far more misinformation on the platforms than any platform could possibly look at and fix. And also there's the fact that vast amounts of misinformation aren't on the platforms at all. Even if the platform somehow could address this problem, I don't think that they should, because there's really no consensus on what is misinformation. Do we want Republicans to decide what is, or Democrats? Probably neither, and certainly we don't want the platforms to decide for themselves, because none of these is trusted by everybody. And that's where I want to focus, is on trust. Too much of the work on misinformation focuses on thinking about delivering facts to people and giving them strong arguments so that they will be able to figure out the truth for themselves. But really, most of what we think we know does not come from direct experience. Instead, it comes from the fact that we have heard that information from somebody that we trust. I mean, how many of you in this room have actually gone out and checked the sort of average annual temperatures in the world to determine whether global warming is actually happening, right? Not many of us. Probably this being MIT, some of us, but not many of us. And so the problem is that the web does not materialize this fundamental notion of trust in a way that we can use. And so we have to fix that. And so my research group has been exploring ways to incorporate trust into the sharing of information. We want to allow anyone to declare what is accurate and what is inaccurate in what they see. And we want them to be able to attach those assessments to any content on the web. We want to give everybody autonomy to decide for themselves who to trust, not to have this imposed by platforms or governments. And we want to allow people to then use their trusted sources to decide what information they want to pay attention to and what information they don't want to see. And I'm going to show you a couple of tools that we've built that explore this idea. The first is called Trustnet. This is a browser extension that you can install yourselves that allows anyone to mark any page on the web as accurate or inaccurate. And it also lets you build a trust network. You say who it is that you trust. And anybody who trusts a person who's made marks is going to see those marks on the pages that they visit, and also on any pages that link to the pages that they visit. So to start using Trustnet, you go and put down a list of all of the entities, people, and information sources that you trust. And then you just start browsing the web as usual. But anytime you're on a web page, you can pop open the assessor and indicate whether you believe that content to be accurate or inaccurate. You can also request assessments of it from people that you trust. And then you put in your reasons for why you believe the content to be accurate or inaccurate, and you post that assessment. And now anybody who trusts you is going to see that assessment when they arrive on this page. Equally important is that if somebody is on a page that links to that information, they will see those assessments by the links. So here you see some content that was assessed as true and has a green check mark. And you also see two articles that were assessed as false. So they have a red X, and you notice they're also faded out. Why do we fade out misinformation? Well, because why would you want to see misinformation, right? It's distracting. We've removed that clutter. You can still click on those faded links because we don't want to remove people's autonomy. And if you do, you will again see those assessments on the pages that you visit. These assessments are anchored everywhere the pages are referenced. So here's somebody scrolling through their Twitter feed, and misinformation that is referenced in the Twitter feed is again marked and faded out. On Google News, You know, if any of those news articles have been assessed, you will see those assessments in place in Google News or whatever other news reader you're using, right? Videos are information too. They can be assessed, and you'll see assessments in playlists, and you'll get warnings if you try to play videos that have been assessed as false by the people that you trust. We've taken this a little farther. We don't want to just mark misinformation. We want to fix it. And so we've built another extension called ReHeadline, which is focused on headlines, because a lot of people only get their information from headlines and don't read the articles. And there's this interesting phenomenon where the articles are accurate, but the headlines aren't, because people know that people don't bother reading the articles. So with ReHeadline, anybody anywhere on the web can propose a fix to a headline, and anybody who trusts them will get that fixed headline. So all you have to do here is looking at an article. You select the title, you type in an alternative, and this becomes visible to anybody who trusts you. Not only on this page, but also on the pages that have the headlines that have been rewritten. So again, we're trying to rescue people before they make the mistake, before they fail to actually read the article. All right, so that's the basic story. Let me quickly address some of the challenges that people raise and concerns and objections when I describe these ideas. The first is to scale, right? People say, I don't possibly have enough trusted sources to be able to annotate everything on the web. Well, that's true. But my trusted sources have their own trusted sources, right? And those trusted sources have other trusted sources. And so these trust relationships form a network, and assessments can propagate through this network so that I can get an assessment from somebody that I don't trust directly, but through a friend of a friend, so to speak. Exactly how to do this propagation is a great research problem. We need to think about the fact that different assessors may disagree and that some of the trust might be misplaced. That's something that we're thinking about. I think that problem can be addressed. Another question is demand. Do people actually want to do all this fact-checking? Well, we have lots of evidence supporting that. We've done surveys where people are already report that they are fact-checking for their friends and relatives. We've had conversations with colleagues at MIT who would like to correct misinformation in their areas of expertise. We know there are fact-checking organizations out there that post articles about fact checks, but wouldn't it be better if those fact checks were on the articles that were wrong instead of you having to go find a different website that reported them? And of course, journalists do this as part of their jobs. So tons of fact-checking happens, but it's inaccessible. Okay, then there's filter bubbles. There's this worry that people sort of form cults and only talk to each other and never find out the truth. Well, there are two responses to this. One is an ethical one, which is people should have autonomy, right? If people choose to only talk to certain groups of people, it's questionable whether we should prevent that. There's also a practical problem, which is that no matter how much facts and arguments we put to somebody, if they don't trust us, they're not going to believe us. We can use Trustnet in a positive way here. If we know which people somebody trusts, we can actually try to deliver information to them from trusted sources where they have a chance of believing it and changing their minds. We can also use the Trustnet to identify failed trust and say, this is somebody you should not be trusting because they assess things wrong too often. Finally, I want to talk briefly about AI. I think that in the short term, AI is just going to exacerbate all the problems that we have with misinformation. So far, we've been able to rely on heuristics that don't always work, but work well enough. We look for well-written, well-reasoned arguments. We believe things that we see in videos. We trust majority opinions on the web to decide what content is worth seeing and believe product reviews and things like that. With AI, all of this is doomed. Large language models are great at writing believable text, right? Deep fakes can create fake videos now. There will be unbounded numbers of AIs that will overwhelm any kind of majority voting. I had to resubmit these slides this morning because an article just came out yesterday about how AIs are now being used to generate entire spam websites, right? They're going to look great and be completely believable and assert all sorts of things and make arguments. And the only problem is going to be that there are going to be some fundamental falsehoods at the bottom that we don't have to have time to verify. We're going to have to instead say, we just don't trust this website, that's it. So that's a summary of my story. We're currently asking for the platforms to clean up misinformation. They can't and they shouldn't. We need to bring in trust. We need to empower individuals to actually say who they trust and have that recorded into the tools that we use so that that trust network and people's assessments of information can be used to distinguish fact from fiction. There's lots of other questions, and I have answers to some of them. I'm happy to talk to you about it, and I welcome you to try out the tools as well.